Oh, good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve Hill with AIQ Systems. I hope everybody's doing well. If you could just pop a Y in the chat box or raise your hand and let me know, first off, if you can hear me, and secondly, can you see my screen? It should show a PowerPoint. Yeah, if you can pop a Y in the chat box if you can hear me okay. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve Hill with AIQ Systems. And if you can let me know if you can hear me okay and you can see my screen okay. Testing. Could someone type a Y in the chat box if you can hear me okay? You see a herd of cats. Haha, that must mean I'm sharing the wrong screen. That's a good herd of cats. Yep. Okay, can you hear me okay? I will switch to the other screen. Let's go with screen 2. I think that's a better screen. Great. Okay, let's get started. Thank you for being here today. We've got this meeting going at last. Have the waiting room on there, and I don't usually have the waiting room, so it's had to let folks in. So my name's Steve Hill. If you don't know who I am, this session is being recorded, and we'll make that available for you later. What we're going to look at today is 5 technical indicators for ETF investors. When I say investors, it's also traders. We'll be looking at a shorter term, that sort of time frame, rather than buy an ETF and then go away for a year and then come back. This is more about trading and what sort of indicators are good for analyzing and where we're going to get the ETF to look at. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ETFs out there. And what I've done, and I mentioned this in a session in the past, is I've created a list of ETFs that I'll share with you. And this 5 technical indicators is a result of some research. A lot of it was from Investors Business Daily's approach to ETF. I would say rotation is probably the best way to look at it. ETFs, again, many of you know, obviously, that they are a great method of trading. We don't have to go out and buy a stock or stocks. We have ETFs that pretty much do anything you can imagine as far as mirroring either stocks, currencies, cryptocurrencies, futures, precious metals, you name it. It's all there. I mean, it can all be done using simply exchange traded funds. And the reason I always mention that is that I recently sat through a session with a trader who was inviting new folks to get on board with trading, and they were talking about how you set up your Bitcoin wallet and all of the things you need to do for funding that, and how futures trading account, you need a separate setup for that, and then you need a separate setup for trading stocks, and if you wanted to do leverage, and if you wanted to go short, and all of the things that we all know that we have to do in order to be able to do all those different types of trading. And the great thing, of course, with ETFs is that we can just trade ETFs because they trade on the stock exchange, and we have ETFs that will mirror both long and short on Bitcoin, leveraged, long and short on markets and leveraged, and also long and short on major stocks like Amazon and, of course, Nvidia and others, and Apple. So it's a great way of trading and actually participating in many markets. In fact, one of the top trading 100 ETFs is actually a Brazilian market. That ETF trades really, really well. And the Chinese market's in there too. So you can trade pretty much anything without having to be in a specialized account. And that's really what you have when you have a futures account, or you have an account you set up for futures trading, when you have a Bitcoin wallet, when you have a stock account that's set up for going short and you're going to borrow shares from your broker. So we all know that's a great thing, right? I mean, that's the thing with ETFs. So what I did was I went out a few weeks ago and looked for, and actually did a search for the 100 most actively traded ETFs. And I took those ETFs, and I've actually created a list of those and added those into my database. And I'll just share that with you real quickly to give you an idea of what the most traded ETFs are actually. And then we'll go through this PowerPoint quickly before we look at some reports and charts. So here it is, ETFs 100. I called this list name. I will share that with you once this event is finished and recorded, and you can get this list. The ETFs that are in here, interestingly, it's a real mixture. I mean, you've even got ARK in there, you know, the technology ETFs. There's a bunch of Bitcoins, of course, both long and short in there. We've got emerging markets. We've got things like the gold and silver, of course, in there. There's really quite a wide range of different ETFs that are in there. I'll just show you real quickly in the reports. This is a report we'll be looking at shortly. Look what's in the top 100. Things like, you know, when I was talking about gold and silver in here, you've got, there's the Brazilian market here, iShares MSCI Brazil, brilliant. So you've got up here, we have communication services. So we've got sectors in the US market as well in here, which is also good. And you've got quite a few broad market, but you also got material sector, the bond market in here. Remember, this is just the top 100 most traded that I popped into reports here, and I've generated on that. So it's a really nice, you know, mixture. You can add, if you're interested in more currency pairs, there are ETFs for that as well, which in this list, I don't think we actually, you know, the currency pair ETFs didn't make the top 100. You know, the top 100 was my choice. There are a lot more. There are a lot more well-traded ETFs out there. So that's where we're starting this sort of framing where I'm going for in this session today. I'll leave this PowerPoint without going up to the full screen because I want to switch backwards and forwards into and out of charts and into the reports area. So we'll run through this. There's just 5 or 6 slides just to give us a little bit of an idea of what this research is about. And then we'll look at some actual chart examples and see how this works. So 5 technical indicators. This is not, you know, there's no rocket science here. These are all pretty basic indicators, but it's just popping them all together as a basket of tools for doing some ETF trading. So the first thing in here is relative strength. As I said, this was partly research from IBD, Investors Business Daily, kind of the bedrock of relative strength. Their method for doing relative strength, we have a similar type of tool in AIQ that measures price action, performance, but usually we do price action against the stock itself. Relative strength in the Investors Business Daily is slightly different, but the goal is the same. We are looking at both annual and the current 3-month of relative strength to see which tickers, in this case ETFs, are in a trend, or, you know, and it's ranked based upon its relative performance versus the other tickers that you're measuring. In this case, I will be just focusing on those 100. And so that's what we'll use as our initial filter. So we'll have the top relative strength ranking, or those towards the top of the relative strength ranking, because we're buying into a trend in the IBD type of focus. And of course, that relative strength report is in AIQ. We'll be using the relative strength short term because we're looking at this most recent 3-month period rather than trying to do a much longer term. And of course, again, we'll be using that as a key off to then add in these other indicators that we can use for confirmation. So relative strength, we'll use the reports, and we'll see that in a moment. Real simple ones. And again, this was interesting. 50 and 200-day moving average. From their research, it seemed that when the price action, and again, we're buying into the trend. So once the 50 is above the 200-day, it's crossed over. If price action is above both lines, then it's a great place to be. If it's just crossed over the 50 to over the 200, then that's an earlier indication. But if we can get 50s over 200 and price action is above both of them, which in most cases is likely to be, if the 50 is above the 200 and the 50-day, sorry, the price action is above the 50 and 200-day moving average, then you're likely to be in a situation where the 50 has crossed over the 200-day. So that's the second thing we'll look at, and it's easy enough to set up in charts. We all know moving averages. Simple arithmetic moving average is what we'll be looking at. Next area is accumulation distribution. So this was interesting. They had a lot of research on, we know that accumulation distribution, or things like money flow, are an attempt to measure institutional fund manager investments within a ticker. And it's the classic story. For example, say you're a precious metal fund manager, and that's your job is to be invested in precious metals at all time, because you've got, say, 50 million of your clients' money under management. So if you've got a buy signal for whatever system you're doing, and it's you're going to go into gold ETF, for example, you're probably not going to just dump 3 or 4 million in there and make the price go up overnight. You're going to do the classic inch your way in, buying towards the end of the market day, throw out a few share orders. Excuse me a moment. And slowly accumulated. The only way we can see that impact is through the closing price, is towards the high of the day, and that's what the accumulation distribution measures. And so here, everything we're doing is we're going long here. Everything I'm doing in this session is going long. And the great thing is, of course, we've got short ETFs, so I can everything is long in my head. It's only long as far as technical indicators are concerned. I don't have to think about doing relative strength weak, because if there's a bearish market, then the relative strength strong is going to have bearish ETFs near the top of the report. Makes perfect sense. So that's the third thing we'll look at. The interesting thing here, high rating doesn't mean a rising price, but it indicates institutional interest. And we'll see that because, I don't like queuing off of this report, because you can go in there and see an accumulation distribution line that's going from left to right at 30 or 40 degrees, and the price action's going nowhere. Okay, so the pressure is on there, but the price really isn't moving up for whatever reason. That doesn't give me a great place to key off to go and make a trade. But it's good to see, if I have other indicators that we're using, if I also see this is going on and the other indicators are giving a signal in our favor. So accumulation distribution is the third one in there. Fourth one is a pretty interesting indicator we don't talk about very much, the positive volume. It's again, the positive volume uses a moving average as a volume, but the key thing about this is the way it's charted is as a variable line and a signal line. What happens is, when the variable line is above the signal line, that means there is momentum in the volume. There's actually enough volume going into the stock, in this case in the ETF, to indicate that it's in a trend. Again, found in AIQ charts, daily and weekly charts, like the accumulation distribution indicator is as well. So there's another factor. So these are all positive things that we can put together with the relative strength, and we can take those factors and use them as our confirmation criteria. Final one, real simple. I mean, we all know that trading volume. This one was in their study, but I kind of bypassed this because I've made a list of the 100 most active trading ETFs, right? So I know they've got good volume, and if they've got good volume, they're almost certainly going to have good bid-ask spreads. there are some um, international market ETFs that are. I mean, I think there's one for the Greek market. There's one for all sorts of countries. Those ETFs are pretty thinly traded, and it's real hard to get in and get out of those. There are a lot of thinly traded ETFs out there. So starting with a list like this, the 100 most active, is a great place to start from, so we don't have to worry about a bid-ask spread that's really wide. So that's the 5 factors. You know, the last one we've already factored in by making this list of 100 top trading volume-wise ETFs. And I did this, you know, I created this list about 3 or 4 months ago, and I've been using it ever since. So it's a good place for us to, as I say, to key off from. So let's go a quick look again at what I'm going to do here is start with the first area, relative strength. I'm going to use the AIQ report to measure that. And so when I go into reports, I've already generated this, by the way. This is from 9/16, so I didn't do last night's update. It's just been one of those days when there's lots going on. So if you have a list, just to recap, many of you will know this, in reports under global properties, you have the capability to define what you want these filtering reports to look at. In this case, I have already created this list, which I will share with you. And I've just generated reports purely on those top 100 ETFs. As simple as that. So I have that set up. If I'm, you know, when I do my update at night, when the data comes down and generates my reports, it's always just going to have the ETFs in here. So here we have the report itself, which is right here, stock reports, relative strength strong, short term. Let's look at this real quickly. I right-clicked on that. So what we're looking at here, short-term period, long-term period is 240, short-term period is 120 days. So that's the period we're looking at to get our relative strength measurement of the trend itself on these ETFs. So a shorter term and rather looking for a much longer term, 120 days. It's pretty a reasonable amount to give us an idea if it's in a trend. How does it work? Well, it actually ranks it internally within AIQ, called a relative strength ranking. The one with the highest value here is probably really moving up pretty fast. Guess what's at the top here? Of course, it's something that is always in the news. It seems NVIDIA, but in this case, it's double leveraged, right? So it's not surprising, given the volatility in NVIDIA, that when NVIDIA is moving up again, which has been happening, this particular ticker moves really fast. And of course, it's relative. So this is, you know, the top 2 stocks up here. Notice the second one is Tesla. So both of these are leveraged. It's not surprising when you get the third one here. It's also a leveraged one. And again, the Ultra Pro, the triple Qs, these are all leveraged. So if you don't want to be into that sort of a volatile area, I'd suggest moving down a little further down in the list here. Plenty of these tickers within the top sort of 10 or 15 are in good short-term trends to the upside. For example, when we go down here, we start getting, there's the Chinese market, 3 times the Chinese market. Again, these are heavy leveraged, is always going to be near the top. Not to say these other tickers aren't great as well. They are. Look, we got gold miners here. We've got silver. We've got natural gas. Yeah, look at durations daily, 20+ year. And this is the treasury. So you've got all of this, everything's in here that you can use to, you know, define great ETFs to trade. As I said, we can go as far down as like the top 20 within here. I've been looking at the gold area has been of interest to me. Gold, GDX here, we've got GDX, we've got silver here. Let's go look at these 2, just to give you an idea of what's going on. So they're quite high up in the list. Gold and silver. So again, you know, this is, I'll take both of these. I'll just click and double, hold a control key, click both of those, click on chart here, and it's just popped both of those up into my charting area for me. I've just got volume on there at the moment. The chart is a Heikin-Ashi chart, which I really like. You know, if I switch back to regular high-low, you know, it still looks the same. It's just, it gives me a much better idea of trends. So I love the way this looks. So we'll stick with Heiken Ashi because it works just as well for this analysis. So relative strength gives us our jumping off point for looking at tickers. And by the way, I could build a list of all of those tickers from that report and dump them into the charts here and just scroll through from the top if I wanted to. And we'll look at a couple of those that are really high flying. But I wanted to set up the parameters that we're using here for this for the confirmation. So just going to get rid of the upper and lower Bollinger Bands, and we'll leave volume. Actually, we don't need volume. We know volume's okay. So what I'm going to do is, from that PowerPoint, we had accumulation distribution, and we had positive volume. So both of those are going to be added in here. So here's positive volume. Happens to be just at the top, because, of course, I prepared this earlier. There's accumulation distribution. I've got positive volume in there. So those two are the sort of key things that we're looking at as a confirmation, because this is these already have great relative strength. That's a great place to start from. We can, I can add in volume as well if I need to. So remember, back in the PowerPoint here, we've done the relative strength. The next one is the moving averages, 50 and 200 day. So that's the next level to put in here. We default usually to 21, 50, and 100. And by the way, this is arithmetric moving average rather than exponential. That just happens to be what the research was showing. So I've already changed one of them to 200, and I've got the 50 here. So I'm going to add those to the chart as well, 50 and 200. So I have that in place, positive volume, accumulation distribution, relative strength's got me as my start off point. And we know the volume is going to be okay because I have the 100 most highly traded. So all 5 elements are in place. I will just chart and settings, and we'll go down and save current indicators. So what that means is when I shut this one down, when I bring up the next chart, of course, as you probably know, GDX, if I bring it back next door to the silver one, every chart now is going to have the indicators on board. So let's just recap what it is that research was looking at. And let's start with GDX, one of my favorites. So obviously gold miners, and you're looking at a chart here. Let me just blow this up a bit. GDX itself, relative strength short term. We can see why it's in there, right? We have this short term move to the upside here. It's looking pretty good. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of a resistance at this level right here. But notice the things that we're looking for with moving averages. 50-day moving average crossed over to 200 way back over there. Price actions sort of through 3 days ago crossed over to 50 days, so it met the criteria of being above those 2 moving averages. The next thing we looked at, of course, was positive volume. Remember, positive volume, we want the variable line, which is the green line in this case, to be above the signal line to indicate that we're in a trend, and it is, and it's above that signal line right there. We don't care about the downside. We're only looking at going to the long side in this analysis. Now, remember, instead of accumulation distribution, we know that it can keep going up even when the price action isn't moving. But what we like to see is something like this, where we're at the same level as sort of highs as we were in the middle of July here. But look where accumulation distribution was in July versus now. So there's definitely a slope to the upside in the accumulation distribution, which may indicate some institutional buying is going on. But we certainly know that there is pressure for the close towards the upside throughout this period. So that gives us actually it's all 5 levels of confirmation. We've got it's in a short-term trend up. It's in a trend according to positive volume. Accumulation distribution is certainly in play in our favor. And we've also got the moving average 50 is above the 200. And we know we've got great volume because that's the pre-filled row you put in there. So it's a good place to start from. And you can see from stocks like the gold miners there, with those confirmations in place, we can see in silver here, which was also just above it in the high relative strength, a similar pattern. Silver doesn't always, silver's kind of it's been the bad boy of the precious metals for quite a while, and it rallied quite a bit, and it doesn't have quite the same pattern as gold does. Look at the highs back here on silver. We're definitely not back at that level there. But again, the same thing. We have a trend moving to the upside. It's broken above the 50-day, and the 50's above the 200. That's our first level of confirmation. Positive volume. It's above its signal line. That means we're in a trend. Volume, of course, as I said, we know that's okay. The next thing here is, what's accumulation distribution doing? Well, actually, it's doing pretty well because, again, we go back here. If we look at this period here, we haven't even reached this price yet. But the accumulation distribution has been going up through that period. Pretty much very uniform in comparison, for example, to the gold shares. So those are the key factors that we're looking for in the charts there. So back into that reports for you, and we'll just have a look at some other tickers in here, because the further down, when you get further down in the report here, and again, remember, because it's relative, so you get the ones at the top here are real, really flying high. So we'll look at one at the top here, and then we'll go further down just to see, so you can get a feel for how far down in the ranking report you can go before you're not really, not really ranking very positive. Because remember, the stocks that are in here, every single stock in this, every single ETF gets to be in here. The ones at the top have the strongest relative strength, the strongest trend. The ones at the bottom have the weakest. So when we look at something like the NVIDIA leveraged ETF, we throw that into the chart here. If we do something like, I'm just going to size this down a little bit, drag this across here. So when you're looking at, because the chart moves around so much, you can see that it's got a similar sort of pattern from when you see in the gold here, but gold went from around about 37 to 39, right? So, you're talking there about 5% move. This looks similar, but guess this has gone from 46 to 58. That's a major move, right? Because it's leveraged, and it's at the top there because of that. Even though pattern-wise it looks very similar, the size and the scale of the move is much bigger on this particular chart. And so again, this one, there's a bit more room for maneuvering to the upside on the NVIDIA 2 times leveraged ETF. It isn't yet above the 50-day average, so that doesn't give us that extra level of confirmation. The positive volume is above its signal, which is good. Notice here the accumulation distribution. There isn't any real sign of an institutional move in here. Look at this, how it moves almost in synchronicity with the price action there. So both this and this don't confirm the relative strength. And that's why those leverage ones tend to sort of take off real quickly. And some of the other indicators don't confirm that until we get past like this level here, or until this one, as I say, the accumulation distribution, there isn't a confirmation there. It's just moving in sync. Versus when you look at this back here, look at the pattern compared to this on the gold miners, how much the accumulation distribution has been going on versus this, where it's just moving in the same price as the pattern. So it gives you an idea, the stocks that are, or the ETFs, I keep calling them stocks, but they are, they trade on the stock exchange. The ones at the very top have the boldest move already, not necessarily the ones that we would want to get into. We might be either early or late to move on those. So when you get further down into that relative strength report, and so if I go down to the bottom here, closer to the bottom, let's pick one like the American Amex Material Select Sector. So this is a sector ETF, XLB. I haven't looked at this one for a while. Remember, these are all, relative strength. They're all in modest trends. But this one, again, this one's moved from about the 90 level to maybe 93 level. So it hasn't moved up a huge amount, but it is trading above its 50 and 200-day average. But positive volume is down below there. So it's not confirming the move on this particular stock. And notice again in here, look at the buying pressure, the actual institutional buying pressure. really isn't showing there's any sort of internal buying going on there. So that would be one you'd probably move on from there. So let me go back one more time into this report here. So we looked at the, there's the gold areas down here. There's also Bitcoin was, one of those that I know a lot of folks are interested in trading cryptocurrencies. As far as the ETF world is concerned, right now the most traded ETFs are purely Bitcoin, single mirroring, leveraged action, and then the inverse. So those are all within this list here. There is an inverse Bitcoin in here as well. Let's just have a look at one of the cryptocurrencies down here. This is GBTC, so it's quite near the bottom. This is the Bitcoin Investment Trust. I think this was one of the first ETFs to make its appearance out there, and GBTC is quite well known. So when we see Bitcoin here, there is a modestly small trend. But remember, it's down near the bottom of the list. Look at the moving averages, definitely not in favor at the moment. Positive volumes, definitely not in favor. Not a lot being said on accumulation distribution. So, the ones down the bottom of the list generally don't give us a great deal of opportunity. It is those, I would suggest that you stick to the top fifth of the list when it's 100 like this. And you could literally do this, which is, you could say, take the top the section like this, build yourself a list, which is what I'm going to do right now, and I'll call this it's from 916 ETF RS for registering, something that identifies it in my mind at least. So it makes a list, and that's going to throw that in charts, which is done. So there's the list. Let me just hit this over here. Got the mouse on at the moment. Let's switch that off. So there's the list itself, and I'm just going to close all these down, and we'll just quickly have a look. We looked at NVIDIA in here. Let's have a scroll through here, see what's going on. Tesla. See, look at the trend in there. So this is the T-Rex 2 times long Tesla. A little harder to see on a chart like this because I need to do this so we can actually see there is a pretty good trend in place here. Why? Because we're at a $12 stock moving to 14, right? So we can only see that when we compress the chart that way. So it's actually moved up fairly decently, which is the reason it's so near the top of the report. But the 50 and the 200 are it's kind of almost above the 50, but not quite there yet. Positive volume is good. Nothing to be said for the accumulation distribution. It's just it's just looking reasonable right there. When I go down to the next one, I'm just going to use the scroll arrow here. Yeah, that one's got some goofy data in it. Again, this is some of these have not been traded very long, so you can see we're back down at very low levels, but they're trading a huge amount now. So check out this one. This one's this is the ProShares Ultra Pro Triple Q. So what the Triple Q does, this is leveraged, and I think this one is a 2 or 3. I can't remember which it is, but the ticker TQQQ. So again, what's happened here from the 58 level to the 66 level over sort of a 5-day period, it's moved up pretty sharply. The positive volume is above its signal line, good sign there. The other good thing with this is accumulation distribution is definitely ahead of the game. I mean, we are not back up to this level here on this ETF, but look where the accumulation distribution is. It's way up above that previous level. So there's certainly some pressure accumulating this stock at the moment, or ETF, that is. We'll look at a couple more before. I just want to have a quick look down into the accumulation distribution point of view, which I mentioned earlier. So here's ProShares Ultra Pro S&P 500. Similar picture to what we saw on the Qs. We've got the moving average above its 250, above 200, price above the 50, P-vol above the signal line. Accumulation distribution is a little bit ahead of the game again. Price levels here are almost back to where they were, but this is a little ahead of the game. So And again, we have another S&P. You know, this is the 3 times ETF. A similar picture is in place. So I mentioned the accumulation distribution is it's good to see in place. What I don't want to see is if, for example, if this accumulation distribution was going down when this was going up, that would not be a good sign. Pressure would be to the downside on the closing price towards the downside each night. So in the reports themselves, if I jump back in there for you, shut down relative strength, the accumulation distribution report is in here as well. And volume accumulation is what we're looking for, which is the internal buying pressure from institutional mutual funds, money managers. The reason, as I've said before, keying off of this report isn't always good because it can just show a flat line on the price for a while. However, there is a weighting factor in here that does give us a sort of a sneak insight that might show a trend in place. So the very top ETF out of the 100 that has been accumulated the most is this one here, iShares S&P 500 US Preferred Stock Index Fund. I've never traded it, but it's the top one. It's in there. It's trading at $33. So if I bring that up into a chart here, check this out. I mean, look at the trend on this. So this has got accumulation going on, and it's actually, a serious amount of accumulation going on in this particular ticker. Notice also that the positive volume is way up there as well. This has been in a trend for a long while. So this is one of those where, you might be thinking, well, this is perhaps I'm too late on this particular ticker. Should have been back around here, maybe was the time to get in when the factors were still in place. All the confirmations were probably in place at that time. So that's the key thing with that accumulation distribution. If I pick one, let's again take the top 10 or 15, maybe 20. I'll just pick one here, the high jump. So this is the Spider Barclays Capital High Yield ETF. When we pop that into the charting area, we've got the same thing again. It's almost like we're late to the game. The accumulation distribution has been going on forever in this particular ticker. It's just sort of ticked up above that positive volume above its signal line. It's not, again, you're talking about, high yield. I mean, this thing just doesn't move massively. It's not its volatility is quite low. So you're not gonna get into this anywhere along here and expect it to gain 20% in 2 or 3 months. It just doesn't happen. One more in here. I'll just look at see what else we had down here. There's let's go with so this is the iShares India, this Indian market. So let's just pop that into. So again here, and I need to really just bring this chart in so you can see the more current data. This has been in a pretty good trend to the upside, and then it's sort of got stuck in this area. Again, this is not a huge amount of difference between 55 and 57 over this last month and a half. The reason, again, this is in here in the accumulation distribution is because of this period here. This has accumulated from this point to this point, where the price action hasn't really moved at all. So there is accumulation going on, but because we're keying off of accumulation distribution rather than relative strength, we don't really get ourselves a very great looking trend like we saw in the gold or the silver or even in the Tesla and Nvidia leveraged ones. We don't get that. So I really prefer to go back to the relative strength report. And it's the key place to go for doing this. So just to recap what that is for us, this is relative strength report. And it's going to be relative strength strong for the short term. So it's measured only over 120 trading days. Keyed off of this, the report itself is keyed off of the ETFs 100, which I'll share when I send out the link to the reporting. So you'll have that. And if you take that and then the tickers themselves, you may have in the database, but if not, we can help you get those in there as well. So that's pretty much it for today. If there's any questions, pop them into the box there, and I'll endeavor to answer them for you. Well, great. Thanks for your time today, and we'll be back on the air next week. Next week, actually, we have a session. Let me just pop this up in the website for you. We have a session on, give me a moment here. So 9:25 next week, there is ETF strategies, golden oldies. There's some old strategies that still work that we've been working through. And David Wozniak from TFR Trader will be doing his full sector and industry update, which he did last year. So keep an eye out for that, or you can go to the homepage and register right now for that. That looks to be a good session. So thanks for your time, everybody, and we'll get the recording out. I know folks register and can't always get in for the sessions, but we'll send it out to the 50 or so who registered today. So have a great day.